What's up, guys? My name's Anthony Russo. Welcome to my studio. Today I'm going to be showing you behind the scenes of how I made my song, You and I. My name's Anthony Russo, and we are here in Los Angeles, California. Today I'm going to be walking through how I made my most recent single, You and I. I think it's cool to peel back the curtain sometimes and just show you kind of the raw, how these ideas start, kind of the process of going through how they become an actual song. So I'm going to kind of walk you through where I started, where it all began, which for me is the drums. Drums are honestly probably one of my worst attributes. I'm not the best at finding the right drums. And a lot of times when it comes to producing, 90% of it is picking the right samples. Not just like the groove of the drums, it's actually the choice of like what kind of kick you're going to use, what kind of snare you're going to use. And originally I had a different kick and snare for this groove that I'm about to show you. And luckily I have a good council of producer friends. And when I sent the very, very first demo of this song, my buddy was like, bro, take out the drums and put in this exact drum loop from Jake Reed's drum kit. If you're familiar with Jake Reed, he's like a dope drummer, producer, and he releases like sample packs. And he has a specific sample pack called Super Dead Drums. And literally just like the kick, the is all I had to take, and it fit perfectly into this sort of like 95 tempo groove. And yeah, I'll just show you a little bit what it sounds like. As simple, as stupidly simple as it gets. Kick, little hi-hat, little snare, kind of has that acoustic, that sort of live feeling. That's what I was going for. And this is really all I had at first, was just these drums. And for the past probably 6 months, that's how I've been starting every song, was just finding a drum groove that inspires me. And I remember like I made this like loop after taking it apart and kind of messing with it, and I went and I sat down on the couch here in the studio and just stopped making music for a brief period of time and just had this on loop while I was scrolling through Instagram. And then I think I was going to go off to dinner. And then right before I did, I just heard this guitar part. That's not even really a part. It's just like a static, I guess you'd call it like a static strum that's playing just like a major 7 shape that just kind of runs the whole song like an 8th note pattern. It sounds like this. I literally just like stood up with my foot on the desk and just turned this mic towards me and just was like playing it, same shape, just strum. Very 1975-ish. I kind of saw the vision right here of like, okay, this isn't telling much of a story like sonically yet, but if I let the bass do the talking, it'll give context to what this sort of layer of music is doing. And if you listen closely, you can hear me breathing. And I never took that out because I thought, I don't know, just like that sort of character, those things live in the song forever. And it's just, I don't know, it just makes it more real. So when I played the drums and that together, you kind of already have something that feels interesting. We're like, okay, we're getting somewhere. I can start to feel this. And remember what I mentioned about when you have this layer of the same chord, once you start playing the bass, it'll start telling the story. Very 1975-ish to do something like that. I love leaving the chords open-ended and letting the bass decide what chord it is. So when I had that, I was like, this is something special. Even though it's the simplest thing ever, at least for me, it inspired the melodies that started to come after. And my writing process is typically getting to a place like this where I start to feel something, and then the melodies start to come. Not necessarily the idea, not necessarily the concept. A lot of times I have to dig a little bit harder for that. But I remember the first thing that came out of my mouth was like, da-da-da. And I was like, oh, that's really cool and feels very versy, kind of floaty. And I really wanted to make the vocals feel floaty, which turned into, these sort of vocals here that you have.
Day and night, I'm thinking about you day and night.
That real like that real staccato-y thing. Yeah, so I started building the vocals around, and I knew I wanted to make them sort of spacey and floaty and feel very like free sounding. So I'll kind of dive into how I affected those later. But back to like sort of how I was building the track and how I was thinking. I knew I wanted to go to like I wanted to depart slightly because of how, you know, maybe repetitive that static guitar is. I was like, okay, it'd be nice to take a breath from that for 1 second and then come back to it for the hook. So that's when I started coming up with the idea for maybe a chord change in the pre-chorus. And then I also was like, could be cool to bring in some electric guitars there and really start to fill out the rest of the song. So that goes, the drums with the bass and the acoustic guitar go for about 8 bars. And then I bring in these electric guitars, which are some of my favorite parts. Let's turn this a little click on so you can kind of see. And again, I'm keeping the acoustic strum going through this whole time. So they're kind of like blending together, but the bass is now doing something different. A couple little ear candy moments with some electric guitar moments. Yeah, so that was really fun. I didn't even know what was gonna happen after that. I just knew I wanted to build up. I think there's a little synth part in here that my buddy Jason Kellner played on this. I believe it was on. No, he had his Super 6 synth over here, and I was like, just plug it in and like just run over this section. And he started doing some cool like analog stuff. It feels very warm, kind of embellishing the chords that were already there. That was really dope. So I work with a lot of collaborators. Once I kind of get the initial idea down, when I start to bring in somebody, kind of changes every time. But I typically always bring somebody in because there's things I'm not great at. Like I said, I wasn't great at drums, and that's why I sent it to my buddy, and he was like, "Joe, just throw these in." But another thing, I'm not a great guitar player or a great bass player at all. Like I really never knew how to play any of these instruments. I just know enough to like lay down my ideas. So there's been a guy I've been working with for a long time named Justin Lucas. Shout out Justin Lucas. He's like one of the illest producers, writers in the game. But we originally met when he would come and play guitar in some of my sessions early on in my career. But to this day, whenever I get an idea like this is a very acoustic, very guitar heavy song, I'll bring it to him. And either I'll have him replay things that I already played, just with like that feel of somebody who really knows what they're doing, where the instrument is just like how I sing. You get those natural inflections, those natural movements that maybe I won't get when I'm really thinking about trying really hard to play something. He just does it naturally. So it's great. And then I'll also just be like, just go crazy, and I'll take what I can get from it and then put it in where I see fit. So there's a couple moments, I think, in this pre-chorus where he starts to show up, and let me try to find this.
Blowing smoke in my ass, burning holes in the sky. Oh, I know you can fly.
Actually, that's one of my favorite parts there is the little, I had him replay the bass on this part, and he added in this movement here that is so cool. Let's see where it is. So the first time around, it's a pretty standard little pocket standard movement. But the second time around, that little slide down, it does so much for me when I'm hearing it with everything.
In the sky.
And then yeah, so we have that little build up where everything goes to eighth notes, and we're just like strumming. Here comes the cut. I like to have a nice cut. The only thing that didn't cut was the vocals there, but I actually think in the final version, after it was mixed, I had my engineer Matthew Huber just completely suck it dry there into a vacuum, so that when that hook comes in, it really impacts. And now that we're getting to the hook, this song is very simple. There wasn't really a whole lot that changed once the hook comes around. I think all we did was my buddy Justin added some of these Nashville guitars that I call them. It's just that those sort of high string. A Nashville guitar, if you've never seen one, is like very, very thin strings. So you get this sort of like almost like an octave up from what sounds like an octave up from like a standard acoustic guitar. And it just gives this like nice sheen to the body. Or not to the body, I guess, to like the top end. And it's almost like something that you feel more than you hear. But I think that lifted it a lot. I also added like a little extra synthetic like hat layer. I had some keys continue to go here, bringing in some sort of like more warm retro sounding keys just to fill out playing the same progression that's being played now. And then one thing I love to do with all of my tracks is honestly, I'd say it's probably like one of my secret sauces that I use, which is not really that much of a secret, is something I probably should have said earlier, but I like to create this sort of like atmospheric layer, like texture bed that just kind of hangs in the background that once I take it out, you'd be like, oh, where, like something just disappeared, but you wouldn't really know it was there while it's playing. And I usually get those sounds by using this pedal. They're called the Mood pedal from Chase Bliss. They're not sponsoring me. I wish they would, honestly, because they're really expensive. But it's like some sort of looper modulation pedal that has like reverb and like other sounds, and basically you can just run a guitar directly through it, and then what comes out on the other end is honestly like I really don't even know how to use it, but that's kind of like you can get these like sort of droning sounds that just, you know, you play one chord and it just drones, and then you can stop it, freeze it, loop it, time delay it, stretch it, do all these different things with it. And then I think on this song in particular, I used to have an OP1. I don't have it anymore, but I ran my OP1 through that, which is sort of this like cool little digital synth. And I got these sort of textures that just kind of vibe. Put a little eighth note sidechain on them so they're kind of like breathing. And those come in and out. They come in for the hook and then they disappear in the verses because you get this sort of empty feeling when the verses start that gives the room for the vocal and whatnot. But when the hook comes back in, those also join with it, as well as a couple atmospheric things. That honestly made a big impact when I was trying to give some flavor to the hook. I wanted something that hit on the one that wasn't super intrusive and like shocking, but gave, I don't know, just like this feeling. I remember looking on Splice trying to find like just a goofy sort of sound. I think I labeled this swoop and I put important next to it because for whatever reason it just gives me like a really fun, I don't even know how to explain it. And then I just had this atmosphere thing going. I'm not sure where I got this from. It seems like I probably also recorded something through there. But yeah, so let's listen how the hook sounds and I'll kind of walk through a couple more parts of it.
You've been fighting most of your life. Baby, don't cry for yesterday. We could just dance, make it all okay. I know your head is a lot like mine, figuring out what it wants to say. Don't you get tired of the same old jokes? Give me your...
I love that little fill that happens right there. That's probably the only thing that changes through the whole song that's different than the regular drum groove, is this little tiny fill. So simple.
Wants to say, don't you get tired of the same old jokes? Give me your hand, darling, we can go anywhere that you like. Just you and I.
So what I love about this hook is, one, the simplicity. Again, we're going back to the same, I think it's like a 2 or 3 or 4 chord progression that's throughout the entire song, aside from the pre-chorus, which has like a chord change, like I mentioned. But I wanted to just go back to the original chords, and like when I started coming up with the melodies for it, I originally had that sort of, it almost feels like an Irish melody for some reason. It's like ba-da-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba, like you could like Irish dance to it. It's very like you're like in the Lord of the Rings or something at the Shire, listening to at like a little party, you know, drinking some moonshine or whatever, and you're just like vibing to this sort of floaty circular melody that's just really sticky, and that's what it felt like. And here's what the vocals sound like.
Baby, don't cry for yesterday. We could just dance, make it all okay. I know your head is a lot like mine.
Just very, very effortless and floaty, and particularly for me, it just happens to be in a good range vocally, which doesn't always happen. A lot of times I have to move the key around to make it feel effortless, but right away I was singing this and I just didn't feel like I was trying at all. Like whatever naturally, how I approached the vocal naturally was what it should have been and what it ended up being. So that's always a good sign when I'm writing a song, is if I notice right away that I just like I hear the vocal back and I'm like, oh, that's exactly how I should have delivered that. You know that there's just some sort of synchronicity happening in the deep webs of the creation process, where it's like this is going to be something, again, like another hint of me to like keep going down the rabbit hole and chasing what could be and what ended up being this song. I want to break down the vocals slightly of like how I affected them, because it's not really that complicated, but there is an effect that I have going on the verses that I think gives it that sort of spacey, like trippy feel. Where are we at here? It's in the verses pre. Yeah, so it's like this delay that's happening that I really love.
Wondering.
Just like a really simple, looks like a fourth note delay, but I'm side chaining it to the lead vocal, so that obviously when the vocal's playing, you're not getting this crazy delay happening in your ears. It's a very common trick, is to have a little compressor tied to whatever sound you're putting the delay on, so that the delay isn't playing while the other vocal is happening. It just pops out right when the vocal's finished. And then I ran it through this little uber modulation thing to give it some sort of like a flatter, more chorusy, like wider feel, not your standard like harsh delay. And then I ran that back through reverb, so it just feels super spacey, exactly what I wanted, because there's a lot of space in between each vocal line, which I felt was right for this song. It's such like a chill, relaxed vibe that I didn't want to do too much vocally, and I wanted to save that for the hook when you get that really like circular melody. And then back to the hook, one of my favorite parts of the whole song is sort of the departure, that very, very slight departure that happens at the end of the hooks. Like I said, we're playing the same chords. And these go around 3 times. Same progression starts again here. And then I depart. And then we go back. So it feels really good when you go back to the verses there. And I thought it just needed that. I thought like if it didn't have that extra little bit of like, oh, something new happened, then maybe it would get like just a tiny bit repetitive. And I don't know, I just like what it did melodically there. It gave me some new ideas to approach how I could wrap this hook up and like bundle it. And then now moving on to the second verse. The second verse was the easiest part for me, which usually it's not. Usually I have to spend a lot of time writing it, but it just made so much sense. I knew right away, this is also going to be, when you listen to my project as it starts to come out, this is going to be like a classic, like Russo thing to do, is to just cut the drums out on the first line of the second verse. I do it without fail every time, and I always think it's like the craziest idea ever, but then I realized I do it every song. But then I was like, you know what, maybe that's actually, just to talk more about this whole project in general, one really cool thing that was very validating for me as a producer, as a writer, was when I was working with my buddy Justin Lucas on the song that I mentioned earlier. We were discussing the whole like eighth note strum of the acoustic guitar, and you'll hear kind of throughout this whole project on a lot of my songs. And when I was kind of trying to figure out, there was a song that I was working on that'll be come out later, that was like, how do I make this feel more like, how do I build this out more? He's like, why don't we just add an eighth note strum? He's like, that's kind of the Russo thing. And I was like, oh, is it? Like that's interesting. I never really thought about it, but I kind of do that with a lot of my songs, and maybe that's sort of my flavor, which I think is cool, even though it's something that's really simple and not like unique to me, but it's something that I naturally reach for when I want to give something like movement, but also color. And yeah, so anyway, I did the standard drop out here.
I know it's kind of nice, yeah, sitting on the fence.
And it just feels good, man. I don't know, it's just like you take a little break. This actually,
but I could see us out there running like the wind.
The double stop ended up being too much. I actually had, in the final version, my engineer put those drums back in. I was like, bro, we can't stop the groove that much. You know what I mean? We can't take away, like we took them out of it and we brought them back in. It was just enough for them to be glad that they're back, but we can't take it away again. So I had him put it back. And the only thing that really changes about the second verse is I add these keys that my buddy Jason Kellner played in. As I keep mentioning, these other collaborators that I work with typically have like they're all dope in their own right. They can do everything, but they're very strong in certain aspects. And my buddy Jason is an incredible keys player as well as many other things. Also a great friend, and he helps me anytime I need it. I'm very thankful to have him. But I was like, yo, lay some Rhodes keys down and just go off, and I'll cut up and use whatever I want. So I ended up laying these guys down, which it's kind of like clunky. Like I think like what I ended up taking was like kind of random, and even the way it cuts off, like it doesn't really know if it's sure of itself. But I just kept shifting them around and trying to find a home for them, and they ended up fitting perfect right here when the drums come back.
Oh, it's kind of nice, you're sitting on the fence.
And they come again the next time they cut out.
I could see us out there running like the wind.
That's it. That's literally the only time in the song that they're there. Like such a random part. And I think for these, I use the standard electric piano from Logic, which is kind of a heater. People kind of sleep on that, but it's really dope. Fast forwarding to the next pre, my favorite part about this pre is there's not a whole lot that changes production-wise, but I add these little ad-libs that I think just like they gave me chills. I was just like riffing at the end of every song. I always just like go and I just riff, do random things to see if I can add anything cool. A lot of times I probably overdo ad-libs. I work on a lot of K-pop stuff. Complete side note. I work on a lot of K-pop stuff, and a lot of times the A&Rs will ask me to do more ad-libs. Like it's a very common thing in K-pop. There's a lot of stuff going on. Usually it's pretty heavy production and vocal-wise. So, which is fun. I love to just go and just like sing random things and find little pockets, little moments where you could fill like every single space. But I try not to do that too much in my own music because I feel like it can overpopulate something that's meant to be. When the song is like this, meant to be simple, you don't need to go crazy with ad-libs. However, these ones sound incredible if I do say so myself. I love the way they feel.
Couldn't you?
Whatever just happened was so bad. And I think I just threw an incredible amount of reverb on there, honestly, and just didn't care. Valhalla Reverb, the most common reverb plugin in the game, without fail. It's always there for you whenever you need it. Yeah, and after that, we go back to the hook here.
You've been fighting most of your life. Maybe I'm crying for yesterday. We could just dance, make it all okay.
Looks like there's something that I changed here. What is this? Just a random little guitar hit that happens. You probably don't even hear it.
Most of your life. Maybe I'm crying for yesterday. We could just dance.
You could feel it. Yeah, you could feel it. You could feel it a little bit. Yeah, and then that kind of like loops around. And I remember I haven't talked about one of the main points of the song, which is like sort of the lead guitar solo that plays at the very beginning of the song and also at the very end. But it's because I didn't really think about it until the end of the song. I was like, oh, should I write like a post-chorus? Should it continue here? And I was just playing around with my guitar here. I'll show you what it looks like. I got this off Facebook Marketplace. It's my baby. It's a little Strat. Took it on tour with me. I love the baby blue color of it. And yeah, I love to just plug it in. Like I said, I'm not really a guitar player or a bass player by any means, but I understand melody. So I like to go in, and I grew up listening to John Mayer, and I always felt like he didn't play guitar. He sung with the guitar, like he knows how to make it sing, and it sounds like it could stand there right with the vocal. A lot of times it was doing more than his vocal performance, which I found so interesting that he leaned so much on that. So what I reach for when I play guitar is sometimes I do too much with it because I try to do melodic things and maybe the song is too melodic already. But this song felt like it could just have a really simple guitar riff that happens. And at first when I did it, I was like, this is too simple, but it ended up being just right. So I'll play you what that sounds like, and then I'll kind of tell you how I processed it and how I ended up making it to what it is on the final version.
Just you and I.
So there's actually two things going on right there. I have, this is the original layer that I played, which is very tingy and thin. And it was cool. But like I said, I knew my boy Justin could probably play it better with like more feel, more like, and he also, funny enough, when I went to his house, he's like, dude, I just bought this old projector. You could probably find the video maybe on my Instagram somewhere, but he has this projector that I guess these vintage projectors from like the 50s have a built-in amp that for like sound, and it has a 1/4 inch input that you can run through. And then it has like this cab, like it's basically like a cab, and it has this really shitty speaker that is on the back side of it. So you can run a guitar through it, and it gives it this crazy like saturation. So we ran through that, and then he had like this reverb plugin, and then we were like, let's just give this a shot and see how it sounds. And I mean, listen to the texture. It's just got this perfect amount of saturation and like fuzziness and like warmth. You can hear the rattle a little bit because we took a SM58 and basically just shoved it right into the mouth of the speaker on the backside. That was literally like taped together. I mean, this was not standard protocol for how you should like record a lead, but when I layered those two together, it was just beautiful. It just felt so warm and right for, because the tingy, you know, look at that. You can hear that sort of like rustle, but it's real, you know. And that's basically how I finished the song. And then you know what? I was like, this is too good. This is how I'm gonna start the song. Typically, I want to jump in right away and start singing and do my thing, but I just felt like this song needed to start with that guitar solo. So this is how it kind of builds up. Remember what I mentioned earlier about these synthetic sounds? Watch how they leave. When the verse comes in, they disappear and it feels so much more open. Just guitar, just bass and acoustic strumming and some drums. That is literally all that's happening right here, but it feels so full. And that's basically the record in a nutshell. Aside from one of my favorite parts of the whole record, was I was trying to figure out how I should start it. Like I wanted to have this sort of like little build up feeling, and I love playing with mono and stereo like settings on certain sounds, so that, you know, when you move from one section to another, maybe it like goes mono real quick, and in your headphones you'll kind of hear everything like right in front of you, and then stereo you'll hear it all around your head. So it's fun to play with that contrast when you want different sections to feel a certain way. So what I did was I ran basically that like standard drum groove and kind of all the instruments that are playing at the beginning of the song. I ran them through this other pedal from Chase Bliss called Generation Loss, which is like a saturation sort of tape emulation, like cassette emulation, where it has different cassette settings. And if you just run anything through it, it makes it really distorted and crunchy. And also you can turn it mono. So it'll take a stereo signal, make it mono, crunch it up. I was like, I'm gonna just run my whole session through that, print it as one audio file, which is this intro file right here. And it makes it really crunchy. And so it's just gonna be that starting, and then as soon as the like lead guitar comes in, everything will go wide. So you might, I don't know if you'll be able to hear it on this, but this is what the intro sounds like. It's right here. If you're sitting where I'm sitting, it's right here, which is so funny. It's just, I just love the way, like, I love audio in that way. Like I kind of nerd out in that way. And then once the guitars come in, you'll notice how the sound like just spreads from like the whole stereo field in front of you. So the sound. It just feels so good. And if you're still watching and you're maybe more on like a music producer side of things, maybe I can peek behind the curtains of how I'm like affecting certain things for those of you who might be interested in that. I'm not too crazy with the plugins for the most part. From what I've learned, you know, the more plugins you're adding, maybe it's just not the right sound, which is not always the case. I love to experiment and see where it goes, but for the most part, I like to keep things pretty simple. For the drums, I really wanted them to be compressed and kind of dirty sounding. So I have some like a Fairchild EQ from UAD that I don't even honestly don't even know what it's doing. I just put on the drum color setting, and I like to see the little meter go like no farther than -2, and then it adds a little bit of glue to everything and a little bit of warmth. I got the Pultec going. It's doing nothing on the top end, but it's doing a little bit of a boost around 60 hertz, and then I like to attenuate for almost the same amount. So it's like all it is adding warmth, really. That's about it. And then I have Gertz. I think that's how you pronounce the Good Hertz. Good Hertz. I like their lossy effect. It's kind of like another vinyl-ish sort of thing. This is 100% dry. I think it's because I have it automated at some point in the song, maybe on those transition moments where it's like doing something different. Same with this this space verb. I think on the pre-chorus towards the end. Oh no, I know exactly where it is. It's at the outro. At the outro, I start adding a bunch of reverb when the song starts to fade out here. Yeah, you can look here and see how that's starting to increase. Just so cool. I mean, nothing too crazy, but it was fun to do. And then I'd say I'm just gonna maybe go through some things that I found interesting, like a little bit outside of your standard way you might approach something. So for the licks that happen in the pre-chorus, that's actually an acoustic guitar. So gross sounding, but in the context of everything, it's kind of nice. And I don't know what the reason was behind why I decided to record those acoustic. I think I was just playing around and thought they would be cool to be in there. You can see here on my channel, it looks like I printed whatever was on there, but I do remember what I did. And one of my favorite Sauce plugins ever is Valhalla's delay. So cool the amount of things you can do with this. It's a great, just like standard tape delay. But one of my favorite things is if you go to its reverbs and you go to effects and go to tape, Leslie verb, it's not going to sound great because it already has it on here printed, but it just gives it this like, it's almost like it's like a modulated gate where like it splashes, gives it this room really quickly, but you can hear sort of the detuning that's happening with the sound as well. And that really, like, I threw some distortion on this as well, so it took it from just a standard acoustic little pluck to like this crazy sound. I also use this a lot on like, if I'm doing anything where I want the background vocals to feel more energetic, or I'm maybe like singing pretty loud or even yelling, I like to use that and put that on a gang vocals or whatever. It just makes them sound, it gives them a ton of body, and not just like a typical body that you get from a slap delay. It's something a little bit grittier, something just a little bit more, I don't know, unique. And then going to the electric guitars here in the pre, I wanted to get that like 1975 LANY kind of like chorusy effect that's not too wet and not too invasive, but it just sounds like nice and warm. And to achieve that, I think I just used a couple of standard. I compressed it a little bit because I was honestly, my playing wasn't too great. I kind of like slammed on the guitar when I would be playing it, so I wanted to tame the attack a little bit on each of these. Just doing a couple standard compression, a little slow compression, and I think I have like a faster compression here, yeah, to catch those initial hits. And then I just threw some Brigade chorus on there. I think this is like one of the better chorus plugins that you can get. Obviously, UAD stuff's not cheap. You could use anything you want, it doesn't really matter, but I've just found that I can get to where I want to be right away with this one, and I use the classic 80s smooth. And that setup, honestly, for me, just like a dry guitar with a little bit of chorus, typically gives me that sort of like lead guitar sound. And I did 2 takes of it and panned it left and right to just give it that width, since everything is kind of sitting right in the middle during the verses, and then that pre, again, it widens it out. I like to kind of switch things up there. Another little trick I like to do with the bass, I always put R bass on my bass. I just like very, very lightly, just a little compression. That's like a tried and true, faithful little compressor. I like to put decapitator on pretty much everything. I think it just gives it a nice warmth and added tone. You can see maybe the difference if I take it off. like unnoticeable, but it does add a little tiny bit of crunch. But I'd say what's doing the most heavy lifting here and making this bass sound really cool is I do like almost a full send to another bass bus that I parallel compress with, and I throw RC20 on it. I got this trick from my boy Andy Schmidt, who I work with a lot. He's another producer, but we take that first vinyl setting, adjust some of the parameters, keep the magnitude 100%, add some flutter, add some noise, and I send that full bus all the way to it. And I also I keep it stereo so that you're getting like this mono signal sent to this effect that's stereo, and it kind of gently just like wraps the bass with a cool sort of like wobbly detuning effect. You can kind of hear the difference if I play it. It's without it. It's right there. And then I add this. You can hear that sort of like fuzz that's happening. The bass just gained a little bit more width, and then yeah, just a little bit of texture. If I go crazy on this, you'll be able to hear. Yeah, I don't know, just cool. I almost do that to every single one of my basses that I do. And any song I do, I always do that, unless it's like an 808 or something. And then I'd say the last like little bit of coolness is just these little moments that I had my buddy Justin play. There's one that happens right as we exit the first hook. He puts I don't know what he does, but he runs the guitar through like a reverb pedal, and then he uses like the foot pedal to kind of like let it breathe and adjust how he sees fit. But you can
just you and I.
He's like,
just you and I.
yeah, kind of like.
I know it's kind of nice here, sitting on the fence.
And then add some more licks in here. Yeah.
But I could see it.
I can't tell you the exact setup, not because I don't want to keep a secret, just because I don't remember what he does. But there's a certain effect that we get, and you'll probably hear it through all of my songs, because I haven't do it for just about every single one. But yeah, I mean that's honestly like the song in a nutshell. It's really not that complicated. There's nothing brand new that I'm doing, but I think the coolest part about why showing something like this is that it isn't that interesting. It's just a simple song. And, 90% of the videos I feel like that I watch like this, when I go looking for inspiration, whenever it's a song that has gotten enough success to warrant a video like this, the first thing they say is like, it was actually really simple. And I feel like there's something to that. Like there's something to that simplicity. Not every time, obviously, but like for me, it was such an easy song. It just like wanted to write itself. It just kept revealing itself to me. Every new section I made, it just was like, yeah, that's it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's right. And then it was like boom, 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 boom. Eventually I have a song. And this is what started this, how I approached the rest of my project. And this gave me, I think, it's like I sort of like found my sonic home, I would say. Like if I was going to be known for a vibe, like a sound, I'd want it to be this. And I think this is going to kind of dictate the direction that I go in probably for a good while. I'm always changing. It's just who I am. But I really liked how this one turned out. And yeah, I'm happy to share with you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to me ramble about this thing that I love, which is making music. This song, You and I, is out now. It's the first single off my upcoming project called 1,000 Funerals. And yeah, I can't wait to show you what I've been working on.
Baby, don't cry for yesterday. We could just dance, make it all okay. I know your head is a lot like mine, figuring out what it wants to say. Don't you get